The rabbis and the slavery question. The Jews of the United States have never taken any steps whatever with regard to the slavery question. As citizens, they deem it their policy to have everyone choose whichever side he may deem best to promote his own interests and the welfare of his country. They have no organization of an ecclesiastical body to represent their general views, no General Assembly or its equivalent. The American Jews have 2 newspapers, but they do not interfere in any discussion which is not material to their religion. It cannot be said that the Jews have formed any denominational opinion on the subject of American slavery. Some of the Jews who reside in slave states have refused to have any property in man, or even to have any slaves about them. They do not believe that anything analogous to slavery, as it exists in this country, ever prevailed among the ancient Israelites. The objects of so much mean prejudice and unrighteous oppression as the Jews have been for ages, surely they, it would seem, more than any other denomination, ought to be the enemies of caste and the friends of universal freedom. Whoa, that's like the most amazing thing I've ever read. So, like, I have a book. I had a book. A Nazi stole it from me. It's called... It's a funny thing to say. Huh? It's a... Oh my God, I forgot what it's called. But it's about a Jewish... It's by a Jewish man. Adventures of an American slaver. Of an African slaver. Sorry, Adventures of an African slaver. It's about a Jew boy. A Jew boy who he works on a slave ship, and then one day he buys his own, and then he buys a fleet, and he does business going to Africa and bringing back slaves. And everyone knows about Aaron Lopez. Don't you? Do you know about Aaron Lopez? You know, Louis Farrakhan wrote a book called The Secret History Between Blacks and Jews. Wow, what else is... let's see what else they say. Dude, I kind of just want to read this again. Some of the Jews who reside in slave states... Oh, look, it's some. So they dedicate half of the first paragraph to some of the Jews that reside in slave states have refused any property in man, or even to have any slaves about them. They don't believe that anything analogous to slavery as it exists in this country ever prevailed among the ancient Israelites, some of them. The objections of some of them, the objects of so much prejudice and unrighteous oppression as the Jews have been for ages. Surely they, it would seem, more than any other denomination, ought to be the enemies. They ought to. Surely it would seem. Surely it would seem. They ought to. Some of them... I'm sorry, this is like making me manic, these people. But that's what their literature does. This report by a non-Jew on the relationship of the synagogue to the slavery issue, presented to the 1853 meeting of the American and Foreign Anti-Slavery Society, was substantially correct. Not all in all, but substantially, and in that regard rather unusual for an age in which so much misinformation about the Jews was broadcast far and wide. The autonomy of the individual congregation and the freedom of individual rabbis from hierarchical control precluded any official Jewish pronouncements on the most important single religio-cultural question of the day. Dude, I could have sworn this was about slavery. Look at that. Ew. Okay. Individual Jews, of course, had participated in the development of the institution of slavery, as well as in the discussion of its merits from the very first. Jewish merchants of Newport, Rhode Island, had been active before the Revolution in the well-known triangle trade, which brought African slaves to the colonies. Jewish residents of the slave states had bought Negroes for use on their plantations and in their homes, and had even made whoa. Jewish residents of the slave states had bought Negroes for use on their plantations and in their homes, and had even made their living from slave marketing. Slave marketing, is that when like a slave makes something and you sell it and profit from it? Oh wait, no, it's probably whenever you sell a slave.
And profit from it.
Yeah. It's kind of like transferring basketball players, like between teams. As the report to the Anti-Slavery Society stated, there were other Jews in the South as well as in the North who had, out of personal kindness or in keeping with their general convictions, freed their slaves. Wait. So whenever they had purchased slaves and then kept these people enslaved for profit, this was not in keeping with their general convictions. This was like out of character for them. I really hate enslaving people, but what about my money? The records of the Manumission Society of New York City preserve the names of many Jews who emancipated their Negroes. In the political arena, it just sounds so trivial. In the political arena, Jews were to be found on both sides of the question. Mordecai M. Noah's New York newspapers took a strong pro-slavery position, while Moritz Pinner's Kansas Post was vehemently pledged to the opposite course. Well, yeah, they planned well together. Judah P. Benjamin and David Ewell, the two Jewish senators, were both champions of the slave system, while the other Jews who were active in politics, like Isidore Bush of St. Louis and Philip J. Joachimson of New York, were enlisted in the anti-slavery ranks. They were not only opposed to slavery, these men were enlisted in the anti-slavery ranks. That's just beautiful. May every man be like those men. If it were possible to uncover and catalog the opinions of all the Jews who lived in the United States during the years leading up to the Civil War, slave dealers like J.F. Moses of Lumpkin, Georgia, who, being a regular trader to this market, said that he would warrant every Negro sold to come up to the bill, squarely and completely. Immigrants like Seligman Cackles of New York, who, in the perennial manner of hero worshippers, named his firstborn American child after the abolitionist leader Gerrit Smith. Philanthropists like Judah Toro, who, living in a slavery environment, disagreed with the system enough to free his own slaves. Wow, that just... Well, the only reason that I have slaves is because you see, I sell T-shirts and things made of cotton. And I don't know. I was born into this slavery society. And we like money, you see. Oh, jeez. We was living in a slavery environment. I didn't agree with it. So, I, I wonder how long people would have slaves for before their conscience got so heavy and guilt ridden with the fact that they are enslaving people that they freed them, because they make it sound like the whole time they just couldn't believe what they were doing. Oh, jeez. I'm so sorry, mister. Oh, you need to pick faster. Look. I've got a quota, and if you help me reach the quota, like maybe you can come inside. I might even give you your freedom. Okay? Give me 3 or 4 good sons, and maybe I'll give you your freedom. Keep losing myself. Okay, abolitionists like Michael Halperin of Philadelphia, who was mobbed by a pro-slavery crowd at the Democratic Party meeting in 1858. We should have to... Wait, what about him? I just started reading in the middle of a sentence. We should have to conclude that Jews were represented in all of the various shadings of opinion, from fanatic abolitionists to fire-eating slave proponents. I didn't know Jews eat fire. It's amazing. You know what that means? Me neither. The Jews were as thoroughly divided as the American population itself. It's almost like the American population... It's like Jews were the fault along which the American population was divided. You know, it's funny, like, they say it. They're saying... The author is saying it. I'm just rephrasing it. It is possible, however, that we should discover that there were fewer Jews than other Americans, proportionately, at the extreme wings of the controversy, and more in the middle ground because, as immigrants, the great majority of them would naturally have taken less interest in the theoretical and sectional political questions than in the more personal problems of economic and social adjustment. Since there was no unified expression of Jewish opinion on the subject, Judaism, unlike the various Christian denominations, played no role in the molding of public sentiment in the crucial years when the battle lines were being drawn. They were just quietly for or against it, I suppose. The Christians was their mouthpieces. This is not to say, however, that Jewish leaders were silent. Oh, I take it back. The rabbis and publishers spoke for no official group of Jews, certainly not for their congregations and readers, but speaking to American Jewry, they could hardly avoid exerting the influence of their religious and intellectual leadership. An examination of the opinions voiced by the rabbis during the turmoil over slavery will be interesting for a number of reasons. It will firstly demonstrate the extent to which the rabbis participated in the various political currents which eddied through American life, and secondly, it will indicate how far they were from unanimity. Hey, would you hand me that little book over there, the really special one, the best one ever? Thank you. I just want to show you, I just thought of something, I want to show it to you real quick. I am lost. It's 1. I don't know. Let's read this one, though. To you I say, to the rest in Thyatira, as many as do not hold this teaching and do not know the depths of Satan, as they call him, I will not put upon you any other burden. But that which you have, hold fast till I come. And to him who overcomes and who keeps my works unto the end, I will give authority over the nations. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and like the potter's vessel they shall be dashed to pieces, as I also have received from my Father, and I will give him the morning star. I saw upon the right hand of him who sits upon the throne a scroll written within and without, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice,
Who is worthy to open the scroll, and to break the seals thereof?
And no one in heaven, or on earth, or under the earth, was able to open the scroll or to look thereon. And I wept much, because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or to look thereon. And one of the elders said to me, Do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has overcome, to open the scroll and its 7 seals. And I saw, and behold, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders, a lamb standing, as if slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. And he came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him who sat upon the throne. And when he had opened the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having each a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. Wow, wait, hold on. My Orthodox friends told me incense is that stuff that you burn because God think it smell real good. Wait, but it's the prayers of the saints? That makes a lot more sense, I guess. Well, the most highly publicized rabbinical pronouncement on the merits of slavery was made at the very peak of the secession crisis by Dr. Morris J. Raffle of New York City, one of the most celebrated orators in the American rabbinate of his time. President Buchanan had proclaimed January 4th, 1861, as a national fast day in an effort to mobilize national sentiment against the impending breakup of the Union. Oh, man. That's heavy. Do you remember that? The Union, our whole country broke up? 600,000 men died. Am I underestimating? Is that... Or did I mean to say 120,000? A lot of dead guys. Imagine if there hadn't been a war. Imagine the glory of our country today. Like, wow, how many Americans died in the Civil War, in the World Wars, all these dead people. Why did all these people have to die? What would life be like? What would the world be like? I mean, that's the body of God, of Jesus Christ, slayed, and for what? And for what? What he did was to place Judaism squarely in opposition to the philosophy of abolitionism. He denied that any statement or law in the Bible could be interpreted to prohibit slavery, and insisted that, to the contrary, biblical tradition and law guaranteed the right to own slaves. Translating the Hebrew word for servant, ebed, as slave. Wow, dude. Ebed? I mean, that's like Eben, which means stone, which is Jesus Christ. He claimed that the very highest authority in the Bible, the Ten Commandments, what about him who issued the commandments? Sanctioned human slavery. What? The Ten Commandments sanctioned human slavery? He accused Henry Ward Beecher and the other abolitionist preachers of rationalistic attempts to pervert the meaning of the biblical text, and challenged them to produce factual evidence to back up their contention that biblical law was designed to abolish slavery. What? Okay, so they say the Bible abolishes slavery, and a guy goes, I know what you're trying to do. You're being rational. You're just being rational. In truth, it was designed to reinforce slavery. It is God's will that you be goy. I would therefore ask the reverend gentleman from Brooklyn and his compeers, come means together, how dare you denounce slaveholding as a sin? When you remember that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Job, the men with whom the Almighty conversed, with whose names he emphatically connects his own most holy name, that all these men were slaveholders, does it not strike you that you are guilty of something very little short of blasphemy? What? What am I reading? And if you answer me, oh, in their time slaveholding was lawful, but now it has become a sin, I in turn ask you, when and by what authority you draw the line. Tell us the precise time when slaveholding ceased to be permitted and became sinful. Dude, this is deep. I've had this book for like 5 years, and this is my first time reading it this much. Raffle made a half-hearted attempt to appear objective by distinguishing biblical slavery from the evils of the Southern system. The Bible, he said, had regarded the slave as a person in whom the dignity of human nature is to be respected. Okay. Hey, ask me, what is a slave? Thank you very much. I'm glad you asked. A slave is a person in whom the dignity of the human nature is to be respected. While the Southerners treated the slave as a thing without rights and privileges. I can see how the Jewish slavery is way better. And actually very holy. Very holy. If only we lived in Jewish slavery. The Bible had safeguarded the slaves against cruelty, mutilation, and abuse. The Bible was humanitarian, and the South would do well to adopt its merciful attitude. I don't know, I'm doubtful that it didn't. But he directed his major attack against the abolitionists for their misrepresentation of the Bible and for... wow. And for their agitation against the legitimate rights of the Southerners who, to his mind, had done no wrong. Whoa. Okay. He claimed that he himself was not an adherent of slavery, but that an objective consideration of the text of the Bible forced him to assume this position. Okay, like, wow. Okay, hold on. You know, I don't like slavery. I think it's wrong. At least I did until I read the Bible and I really considered the words of God in the Hebrew scripture, and I was like, yeah, let's make some money. Let's make some money. Oh, thank you, God. This sermon aroused more comment and attention than any other sermon ever delivered by an American rabbi. Wow, I need to find that sermon and I need to give it in its entirety. That'll be fun. The pro and anti-slavery forces had for years been arguing about the attitude of the Old Testament to slavery. For fundamentalist ministers, at least, the testimony of the Bible on slavery was preeminently important. Now, at the very time when propagandists, both North and South, were delivering their final appeals for support, a learned rabbi had finally settled the... that's just going back real quick to the rabbi arguing for slavery. I think that's the only argument I've ever heard for slavery. Like, I was taught in school that, the South, we just wanted our slaves. We wanted them so bad, we'll fight and die for them. But I've never heard a quote from Robert E. Lee or anything like that. I mean, which made it... Like, this rabbi, it was really fighting for slavery with his rhetoric and with citing the Bible. Oh, man, I want to hear that sermon. I want to read it. Printed in its entirety in the daily press as a separate pamphlet and in a compilation of similar sermons, the Bible view of slavery was given wide circulation. There you go. We got to find it. The Richmond Daily Dispatch said that it receives the praise of the press as the most powerful argument delivered. Damn! In the entire religious controversy about slavery. Whoa! Sorry for the constant interruptions. It was used frequently throughout the Southland as proof of the sympathy of the Jews for the seceding states. In the Virginia House of Delegates, for instance, in the Virginia House of Delegates, for instance, when ex-Governor Wyndham Robertson was urging support for his resolution to invite the Richmond rabbis to open the daily sessions of the House with prayer, only Christian clergymen had previously been permitted to do so, the raffle sermon served a fine argument. It is fit at a time when we are standing on all rights of equality in other respects. We should be careful not to refuse lightly the benefit of that principle to others. Nor perhaps is it inappropriate to remember here a late powerful and eloquent voice that has been raised by a learned Israelite in New York in vindication of that social institution in which our peace and welfare are virtually involved, and in defense of which we are now engaged in a struggle before, I might almost say against, the world. Dude, I didn't understand anything that I just read. By the way, that was one sentence. Let me double check. Actually, that was an incomplete sentence because it starts with a freaking ellipsis. In Memphis, when the Reverend Simon Tuska wrote a letter to the Memphis Daily Appeal defending Jews as loyal citizens, he pointed to the fact that it was not a Christian clergyman, but a rabbi who had delivered the most forceful arguments in justification of the slavery of the African race. Ooh, Freudian slip, huh? What's the difference? All right, I'm going to read that again because this is an amazing sentence. In Memphis, when the Reverend Simon Tuska wrote a letter to the Memphis Daily Appeal defending Jews as loyal citizens, he pointed to the fact that it was not a Christian clergyman, but a rabbi who had delivered the most forceful arguments in justification of the slavery of the African race, and the most thorough refutation of the rabid abolition views of Henry Ward Beecher. Dude, the rabid... Okay, so the rabbi is telling the abolitionist that he is rabid for his stance. The rabbi is calling the slavery abolitionist rabid for his